Okay, well, it's a pleasure to be here and say a few words about Prep 60. So again, Darren Hess, I'm with Weber Basin Water Conservancy District. We're the district in northern Utah that's the large water purveyor, similar to the other 4 water districts that we'll talk about. So Prep 60, as Cameron mentioned, is made up of the largest 4 districts in the state of Utah. And what we are really trying to do is prepare for the future in water infrastructure within the state of Utah. Obviously, Utah being one of the driest states in the country, we do have some water issues and problems. And obviously this last year with the drought has been a real issue for us. So you can see the 4 water districts that are shown there at the bottom, Weber Basin, Central Utah Water, Jordan Valley, and then Washington County Water Conservancy District down south in the St. George area. So again, Prepare 60, we're preparing for 2060. You know, that's where that name came from. Again, we're protecting the resources we currently have. We're conserving resources that we currently have as well. And then we're providing for the future. So that's really what we're focused on and what we're trying to do. We also did the State Water Infrastructure Plan. And what we tried to do is really come up with how much dollars are really going to need to be spent over the next 50 years on water infrastructure. And that's what this water infrastructure plan is doing. It breaks up each of the state into different basins. And you can see like the Weber River Basin is in green there. You got Jordan Valley there in blue. And then Washington County is down south there in the purple, the Kanab Creek, Virgin River Basin. And then Central Utah, obviously, is the central part of the state there. And what we're looking at really trying to determine is how many dollars are we talking about spending? And we're talking about spending about $38 billion over the next 50 years. So that's with a B. 20 billion of that would essentially be to rehabilitate or repair and replace our existing infrastructure that we currently have. 18 billion would be for new infrastructure that needs to be built to continue to provide for the growth impact that we're seeing in Utah. Water funding. So basically, there's a 3-legged stool to fund the water projects and the water that's currently being delivered in the state of Utah. We have water rates or user fees, user charges. We have impact fees, and then we also have property taxes. And I'll just talk about each one of those briefly. So water rates, that is to fund our ongoing operation and maintenance and any replacement costs that we have of our treatment facilities and the water that we deliver to each individual tap. Those are tied to the current use, so that does vary seasonally. And then by law, we can only charge the amount it costs to capture, treat, deliver, and conserve that water. So those are water rates. Impact fees, if anyone's built a home, and I'm sure many of you have the one-time payment up front that you paid when you pulled your building permit out. And that's when impact fees would typically be paid at that time. So those are for new facilities or water sources for growth. And the intent there is that as people build and we have additional population growth, that those individuals pay for that new component of water as is required in that area that they're currently building. So, and again, it allows future water users to share in the costs of this new infrastructure that needs to be built for those areas. And then property taxes is the third one. It's determined by state law. You can see Utah is one of 8 western states that use property taxes for water infrastructure. It allows for future users to pay capital cost of future infrastructure. There's a lot of times there are large water projects that need to be built, whether that's a large aqueduct, another large reservoir, whatever it might be, huge pump stations to pump water. There's a lot of costs involved in creating those projects. And as a result of that, it makes sense that you actually distribute those costs among the whole population so that everybody shares equally in some of those costs. And so that's why property taxes are used to be able to help pay for those. And it does provide a stable revenue source as well. The other thing it does is it provides a lot of the other amenities that water provides to us: recreation, endangered species, flood protection. When we do have a nice water year here, there's a lot of flood control that takes place, and water managers are managing the water as it's coming down. We're trying to prevent flooding in certain areas, depending on where you're at. And it's difficult to charge an actual user fee to every individual to say you're going to pay 10 cents per gallon for the flood control that we're going to administer here this year. It's not something that's done every year. Same with the recreation that's taking place on all of our water bodies and reservoirs that we own and operate. And so groundwater protection is another one. We pumped our groundwater sources heavily this year because we wanted to try to keep as much surface water as we could up in the watershed because the drought was so bad. And so as a result, we really dropped the groundwater levels. And hopefully, those can recover a little bit if we get a little more surface water this year. November was really dry. October was really good. November was really dry. So we'll see what December brings, but the last storm we had the last couple of days is a start. So, and then also continues to maintain our land values. Everything that we do in Utah, all of these different elements help us to keep our land values up, keep the economy moving forward. We would hate to have to stop development because of lack of water supplies. That's really not what the governor wants us to do. Our job is to try to make sure the water is there and available as companies move into the state, folks move into the state, and we're trying to support that economic development. You can see in terms of financing these large water projects, the model on the left there is the financing model from essentially 1900 to 2015, where the federal government really took a big portion of the costs in the red there. And you can see as we move forward from 2016 to 2070, that really the federal government, those funds are dwindling and they're really kind of drying up. And so the bulk of that is going to fall back on the water conservancy districts in the state, as well as the state revolving loan fund that's in place, where districts can get loans from the state that they pay back. The cities are there in green, and then small projects with revolving loan fund as well there in yellow. But basically, it's the water districts and the revolving loan fund that needs to take up those funds into the future. And so anyway, that gives you kind of a breakdown of how things are moving forward and where that funding is coming from. So where does Utah's precipitation go? The big circle on the left there, the blue, you can see the natural environment and groundwater recharge is about 88%. So the bulk of that water goes back into the system to recharge our groundwater supplies and goes back to Mother Nature. You can see those other slivers there in the pie. You got net outflow in orange there, 3.8%. That includes flow to the Great Salt Lake. Your green there is the wetlands and reservoir depletions. That's depleted out of those reservoirs as we have evaporation take place throughout the year. And then we're breaking up the kind of the light blue and the red sliver there over to the circle on the right. And you can see as we delve into there and look at that, that's really what we're talking about in terms of our ag depletions, and then our residential indoor estimated use, outdoor use, and commercial. You can see 80% of that water is essentially ag use for the most part. That number is probably decreasing a little bit over time as we have ag conversion, as you have homes and things move in on these agricultural lands. I know as I drive out to my mom's place up in West Point, northern Utah, not near as many farms as there were 10 years ago as there were then, there are now. And so you just see a lot of development taking place. And we've seen a lot of that the last couple of years. So, but you can see in terms of slice of the pie, it is rather small in terms of residential use, indoor and outdoor, and commercial use. I know most of you understand this, how water gets from the upper watershed or our mountains It flows when we're not in a drought, it does flow to our reservoirs. This last year, it didn't do that very well. But from the reservoirs, we take that to water treatment plants. We treat that at our water treatment facilities. Weber Basin, we have 4 water treatment facilities that we treat water with. And then we deliver it to large tanks that store that water. Typically, most of them are buried. There's some that are above ground still. And then we deliver it from there to individual homes. You can see water travels about 100 miles typically from the upper watershed to your individual household. And there's a lot of infrastructure that takes place to be able to deliver that water to your home. A couple other statistics on there. There's about 750 dams in the state of Utah that are regulated by the state. So that's a lot of water that we're storing. And the average water main is about 50 years old that ends up failing in the state of Utah. So you get about 50 to 70 years of life out of water infrastructure when it's originally constructed. We're trying to design for as long as we possibly can, but that's typically what we're seeing. And most of the water infrastructure is over 50 years old. So there is a replacement cycle that needs to take place to make sure that infrastructure continues to deliver the water it needs to. Roles in the water system, you got federal, state, and local. Again, the financing role of the feds is dwindling, as I was talking about. The state will play a bigger role, both planning and regulatory, to fill that gap that we were talking about in terms of that financing. And then the local group will be the primary interface for water system end users. And so again, the water conservancy districts will have to help fund a lot of this new infrastructure that needs to be built. The H2O Collective, that's an initiative that's been around about a couple of years now. And that's where the league is combining with Prep 60, and we have professionals both with the League of Cities and Towns and with the Prep 60 group, and they're working together to try to provide meaningful water conservation tools to cities across the state of Utah. Different strategies, training at the local level, just to help educate folks like you, mayors and city council, to help understand what you can do as a city to be able to conserve water into the future. What are some changes that can be made in terms of your city ordinances to reduce the amount of water that's placed on landscapes moving forward? What can be done to work together, to collaborate, and to make sure that in terms of land use planning, we're already thinking about the water required for the land moving forward. And we need to make sure that that's in our minds as we plan and move forward in the state of Utah, because there is a limited resource with the water that we do have. I just want to finish up and talk about the drought in 2021. It's one of our reservoirs in northern Utah. That's Echo Reservoir, if you know where that's at there. It ended up about 17% full by the end of this year. Or the end of the season. So it's as soon as the season shut off, we shut things down about September 20th. We shut the valve. We're not delivering any more water out of Echo, and we're just slowly trying to creep it back up. But it got down pretty dang low. You can see that's the Drought Monitor as of November 23rd. Still, the bulk of the state is in extreme drought. We have some that is still D4, which is exceptional drought, kind of in that middle brown area. But you can see for the most part, the state is still in the extreme drought or the D3 category. This is the Weber Basin system up north, and this is who I work with. These are the 5 counties that we service, and it just gives you a little bit of a case study just to show you what happened this last year in the Weber Basin area. And again, those are the 5 counties that we service, just a little south part of Box Elder County. But it's mainly Davis and Weber counties on the Wasatch Front, and then Wasatch back, we service Morgan and Summit counties. This is the snow water equivalent that is shown. You can see the green line there is the average that we typically see throughout the season. This is in 2021. The dark line or black line is the actual snowpack that we received this year. And then the red is the lowest that we've ever seen over a 30-year record. So you can see there, I mean, snowpack, was about 70 to 80%. It wasn't horrible necessarily. So it really wasn't too bad. But when you talk about the soil moisture or how much moisture is in the soil, that's where we really struggled. You can see there, January 1st, March 1st, the black line, which is the current year, 2021, it's so far below the minimum. I mean, it's ridiculous in terms of the percentage. Typically you're about 45%, 40%. We were in the 27, 28% range. So really, this is why we had such a struggle trying to fill or have any runoff at all and fill our reservoirs, because the soil moisture was so low. As soon as that water melted, ran off the mountain, it just soaked right into the ground. It did not make it into our streams, into our rivers, and subsequently did not make it into the reservoirs. You can see there out on the right, September 1st, you can see what that black line is doing. It has definitely bumped back up and is much higher now. It's about right at the end of that graph. You can see the green and the black are intersecting. So we're about normal or even above normal. Those storms in August, those rainstorms really helped us out and bumped our numbers up. And then October, it bumped them up as well. So once the ground freezes and we lock that soil moisture in, it pretty much stays throughout the winter time. So we're looking a ton better this year in terms of soil moisture now than we did last year. So if we do get snow this year, and hopefully it keeps coming, then we should be in a much better situation, at least have it run off into our reservoirs. So, and then the precip, again, the black line followed the minimum line we've ever seen just throughout the year, because it was just so low. And then it bumped up a little bit there in September. In October, it bumped up quite a bit. But again, November dove right back down because November was so dry. One of the driest Novembers we've ever seen. So it's just kind of a yo-yo going back and forth. And then this just gives you an idea of the Weber Basin system. So typically in a normal year on the Weber River, we store 70 to 80,000 acre feet of water. And an acre foot of water, again, that's 326,000 gallons. So that's about how much water it takes for the average home, both indoor and outdoor, uses during a year. Something like that, Maybe it's a little more than that. But it's basically a football field, 1 foot deep. That's what an acre foot is. And that's how we measure our water. So it gives you an idea. Ogden River, we store 30 to 40,000. And then in Willard Bay, we'll store about 80 to 100,000. But you can see in 2021, we stored 7,300 acre feet total, and we normally store 220,000 acre feet. So that's 3% of the normal storage that we would see. And subsequently, that's why this year was just so bad, because we just didn't store any water. And so we were using the previous storage from last year is what we were using this year to be able to deliver to individuals. So when we use last year's storage, that just drops our reservoirs even lower. And on average, our reservoirs are about 30% level. Northern Utah, we're probably worse than, say, central Utah. Some areas of central Utah were really bad. So it kind of depends on the area you look at. But we're really hurting up north with only 3% of our normal storage. So again, with our drought mitigation, we do have large storage reservoirs that really, without the reservoirs this last year, we would essentially have been out of water without those large reservoirs doing their job. So thankfully, we do have large reservoirs on the system. We need to continue to move the needle on conservation. That's really our largest water supply project moving into the future, is the water we can conserve on the existing system. And then we're continuing to diversify our sources and drought contingency planning. Many of the water districts have those in place. We used them this last year significantly to be able to extend our water supplies as long as we possibly could. And so, so with that, I think that'll do it. So appreciate your time, and I know it's been a long day, so appreciate your staying awake for the presentation. So.
Ask a question.
Yep. So just make sure to repeat the question.
How many years of heavy rain or precipitation will it take to get to where you'd like to see us be? It's not a quick fix, is it?
No, it's not a quick fix. So the question was, how many years of heavy rain or additional precip would it take to get back to where we'd like to be? So normally, like a 2011, which was a really wet year, if we had just a monster year, like off the record books, we could get there in 1 year. But we're not going to see something like that, because that happens once every 50 years. So we're probably looking at a 2 or 3 normal years to get back to where we'd like to be with the reservoirs full. And so it's probably the holes are so deep in our reservoirs right now. Like that one you saw was only 15-70%. We would need a couple of really good years to be able to fill that reservoir again. So we're talking multiple years of normal to get back. We'd have to get like a 80%, 180% of normal snowpack to be able to get back to where we'd like to be. But soil moisture is really good right now. Let's just pray for some snow. Keep it coming.